what I learned using Chat GPT and creating prompts. A lot of you may just be here because you're nosy, that's all fine. However, if you actually want the real value from this channel, you need to be consistently consuming the content. So I highly recommend you subscribe. A lot of content out there is what you can do with Chat GPT, but not a lot of it is really telling you how. So people are like, oh, you can automate your marketing flow and do all this and that. But then if you actually try using it, it's a little bit different. And it's certainly not as easy as people make it out to be. I use Chat GPT's completion prompt. So there's a few different things you can do. You can do like image generation, you can do like translation, code completion. So there are 4 different models really to choose from when it came to Chat GPT. I kind of picked the Text DaVinci one, which is what's currently used on the Chat GPT that most people are used to interacting with. So not only is it what we're most familiar with, it actually seems to be the best for what I wanted, which is natural language generation. It's not the cheapest though. So what was I trying to do with Chat GPT? It was an experiment creating an excuse generator so that you could cancel on your friends. There will be a link somewhere. And basically the whole point was to create like gaslight sassy messages, which is an experiment on natural language generation really, and seeing what kind of prompts you can use to get a machine to make emotive text, which is a lot harder than just, let's say, you need a marketing email done and you go, oh, sell this for me. It's a little bit different. If you're interested in how I created this with code, it's actually quite simple. I'm building portfolio pieces to get people with more stacked CVs so they can get better jobs. There will be a link somewhere to that. The source code is free. You can have a look. It's actually pretty simple. So I'm going to go over the main things I learned, the things that caught me off guard, and more effective ways of using natural language generation. So the ways that I actually learned it was easier to prompt emotive text, if that's the type of thing you're looking for. But I think anyway, it just kind of teaches you how to ask questions appropriately for ChatGPT, and it will also go into how it processes your requests and what it outputs and why. Okay, so the biggest takeaway I had was difficulty with refining sentiment. So my interest was quite particular. I didn't want a marketing email where it says the value of my product and talks to the customer in that language. I wanted something sassy and gaslight, like how do you tell ChatGPT to be angry? It's actually a lot harder than I thought, because I thought at first I could say, oh, angrily say this. Doesn't work like that. It's even harder if you're going for like sarcasm as well, or like dramatism. To understand how responses were created, I did some research. For better accuracy, they use human and code to refine the model in unison, which is kind of interesting. So humans are amazing at context. We can read something and kind of understand the context it's in, which is like sarcasm, stuff like that. But we're quite slow and we are expensive because you have to read everything. Machines or code, on the other hand, is kind of the opposite. It's got no idea of context, blah, 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 but then it's great at very quickly assessing things and it's completely free. So they kind of combine the two to refine the model that we're using. The code would basically use a process called token prediction. And essentially what it would do for any sentence that you have, it splits each word into a token, well, even segments of a word. So like, let's say and would be a token. Then let's say you have a larger word, refinement. Refine might be a token, and then meant might be a token. And it kind of just splits up into separable segments. And it basically puts this into a mathematical formula. And from all the text that you feed it, that it splits into tokens, it can then predictively tell you what word is likely to come next in a sentence, which is really interesting, right? So let's say you had a sentence, the cat was sat on the, it could predictably, based on everything that you fed it, it could say what the most likely word was next, whether it was like roof or mat. So the cat sat on the mat, the cat sat on the roof. So mathematically, it found a way to actually predict it. However, it didn't actually understand the context, which is kind of the pitfall of code, right? It can do that all day, it can get very good mathematically, but it doesn't actually know what a cat is, it doesn't know what a mat is, it just knows that they kind of go together. It's just abstractions of words that it knows where to place them. Like I said, because the machine side didn't really understand the context of the words, even though it could predictably do things right, sometimes the accuracy would get very high of the words, but then when it was wrong, it would be very wrong, which it would be a mistake that maybe a human wouldn't make. It was that severe of a mistake. So they kind of combine that with humans. So the code would do all this stuff, and then you'd see the outputs that the code did, and then basically they get humans to grade sample sizes of it. Humans would basically give it a score, and the machine would then use this score to further refine the results to say whether like what the response gave was good or bad, to even further fine tune it. Obviously, at the end of the day, the machine still doesn't actually understand what the words mean, but it has a more reliable understanding of what fits together based on the human added context. That was the most confusing part of the video, so we're in the clear now, don't worry. Back to my focus on sassy messages. So likely they weren't optimized for this, right? They probably didn't train the model on Mean Girls, sadly for us. So originally I just tried the simple thing, which was respond in X manner. So angrily, sassily say this, or gaslight my friend into, and it didn't really give what I needed it to. So after that, what I would start to do is I tried to weave in blame into the response. So I'd ask ChatGPT, oh, apologize to my friend, but then blame them for, and I thought by combining the two, possibly it would kind of get, more sassy and crude. But it was kind of hit and miss. Like sometimes yes, sometimes no. It would get confused about whether it was actually blaming them. I think because the predictive text, if you're saying sorry, it would assume that the blame would be on yourself because that's the way it was trained on the training data. And again, it doesn't necessarily understand what you're telling it. It just knows what the probabilities are of having certain words. So if I try and apologize and then blame someone for something, you'd end up apologizing also for what you're trying to blame the person for. So that didn't really work. Then I started adding prosaic text, which is actually one of the ways they do suggest, which is you basically have sentences that tell what you're doing. So my friend betrayed me. I missed their birthday. I didn't want to go to their birthday anyway. Tell my friend that blah, blah, blah. And by layering it with text like that, you kind of give it context to tease things out, which I guess, again, it's by adding words and sentences that might have been used in the training. So if I use the word betray, that might have been in a text that they trained it with that was quite negative. So that would help nuance the other response. The problem with this is that it didn't really give me what I needed because it was trying to be exact. The people that trained it probably wanted it to be more proper and trim, which is fine. I just wanted smoke, so that didn't really work for me. The way I ended up finding to counteract this was basically the ridiculousness of the prompts. And funny enough, it's kind of how we build sentences ourselves. What is dramatic really for humans? In a way, it's a shift between tonality, right? So adding more dramatic reasons and blame to what it is that you're asking Chat GPT to do will actually make it this big nuanced combination of text, because the text that it will be trained on, if you think about the context where if you use word like betrayed, what sentence was that in? Surely it was a dramatic sentence because it wouldn't just be in like a normal sentence. So by adding the more abstract words that are more emotive, it brings a dynamic to it. So an example of this that I generated from the prompt I was creating was, hey, I hope you're doing well. I wanted to let you know that I won't be able to attend your bar mitzvah because the cost of living crisis is not a joke and it's really hard to make ends meet. Okay, kind of normal, a little bit of a stupid reason or whatever, and the difficulty of living kind of adds a little bit of drama to it. But more than that, I can't participate in a ceremony where people are constantly doubting my value and the quality of my ideas. So I'm sorry, but I won't be able to make it. Take care. If you split the sentences down, none of them are really crazy, but it's the contrast between them. So the first sentence, you kind of just explaining, hope you're doing well, can't really make it. Okay, kind of normal, bit of a weird reason, or you didn't need to have that much information in the reason, which is what makes it kind of not sassy or dramatic, but a little bit like, oh, cool. Then the next sentence is a complete shift, but it's like also, I don't trust you, I don't like you. It's like, whoa, where did that come from? And that's what makes it kind of dramatic and sassy. And then amazingly as well, because ChatGPT doesn't actually know it did this, but take care at the end. With our human context, knowing that came after a sentence of saying, oh, you always doubted the quality and value of my ideas, take care. That actually adds sass. It's by combining different types of prompts that you generate these sentences. But obviously the code doesn't actually understand this context, so you kind of have to manually craft it. You have to use dramatic words. You can't use like a not. So my friends never believed. It doesn't give the same pizzazz on the prompt as my friends always doubted. And I believe it's because the training data will have used the word doubt in a more dramatic or negative sentence, whereas I believed could actually be a positive sentence. So if it mathematically estimates what sentences were from what words and predicts what should come next, you always want to use a negative word, which is more likely to have been used in a negative sentence. Which I know it's kind of just guesswork depending on what the model has been trained on, but it's the most reliable way I found to get a more appropriate sentence for your word. So this was just my learning on using AI to make useless messages. If people like it, I'll make more videos on the AI stuff, because I actually do think it's pretty interesting. And especially natural language generation, I don't feel like too many people explore it with bringing out sentiment. Although, who even knows how valuable that is? I'm not sure. I just did it for fun. This is just my experience, but I do hope it was useful. If it was useful, please share it with someone else that you think could benefit. Thanks for your time, guys.